When it first appeared, Keith drew it like this, with this sort of stuff on top. And I didn't want him to do that. I didn't want it to look that way. Because in history, Zeppelins look like this. And I like the idea that the top of an airship was very wind-blown and kind of bleak. And it was almost like standing on the wing of an airplane. If you slipped off, you could fall to your death. And there are wonderful stories of Zeppelin crew up on top of a ship doing repairs, and it's starting to rain. And the hatchways automatically close when it's raining. And so they're trapped up there and have to fend for themselves. If the airship is going 50 miles an hour, they're in a 50 mile an hour wind. And it was very exciting. So I didn't want the more civilized look of the top of the airship. I wanted it more like this. And we have scenes on top of the airship like this. You can see Darren here and a German airplane. And Darren is connected by ropes to her compatriots. And that way, if anyone falls off one side, she can jump off the other side and form a counterbalance. That's how the crew keeps themselves alive. This is another illustration showing the airship from below. And one thing I learned about writing an illustrated book is that you have to move your characters around. If you keep your characters in the same room for scene after scene after scene, then Keith has to draw that room again and again and again. And it's hard to make it visually interesting. So you see my characters go on top of the airship, underneath the airship. They even go inside the airship, kind of like Jonah in the belly of the whale. And there's a lot of things that happened like that, where I would write something, and then when Keith drew it, I realized I had to rewrite it. There was one sequence of scenes that were all at night. So I said to him, so he sent me back the sketches after I sent him the chapters. And I said, why is it all so dark? All these sketches are so dark. And he said, it's at night. So I said, okay, I have to change the structure of the story, make one of the scenes more light, just to make it more visually interesting. In other words, it's like being a filmmaker. And of course, people who write comics probably know these things. People who write movies know these things. But as a novelist, I had lost this skill. 100 years ago, novelists might have known this because they expected to be illustrated. But now, living in this world, we don't expect it. And because I was moving my characters around, we began to make deck plans of the ship so that I know where everything is. And these are not even for inclusion in the novels. They don't happen in the novels because they are, schemata. And we did some full color renderings of the animals just posed, so we knew what they looked like. I also did a cross section of the entire ship, or Keith did, so I can see the way all the parts fit together and what it looks like inside. And a cutaway of some of the clanker machines to show what they look like inside. One of my protagonists spends a whole month running away from the Germans in this very small, cramped space. And of course, when I was writing it, it didn't occur to me necessarily how small it was. I had a mental idea, but not an emotional idea of how cramped it would be. But when Keith drew it, I think it became much more clear to me. And I think it became more real. And I've always considered myself a visual writer. But you're never as visual as you think you are. And I think that you'll never be as visual as a visual artist, because that's their job. And Keith is better engineer than I am. And I sort of had to go back, seeing this, and rewrite these scenes to show how compressed and how it's almost like everyone's always, like when you crowd together in a photograph, you know, and you're always pushed a little too close together. That mood has to be carried out. And of course, quickly, one of the things I've enjoyed about making a book full of art is that I get more fan art. Obviously, people want to build the things they see in the world. They want to draw. So I get Lego recreations of my work, and also drawings that try to do Keith's style, like this. You know, you can see this the same kind of Edwardian illustration, but it has, you know, it's a different hand, a different style, a little bit. And as I showed a couple of hours ago, some people do it as a manga style, because of course many kids read Japanese comic books. So they want to recreate the characters, and this is what they consider to be a proper kind of illustration. So they throw away the Victorian style that Keith does and do it in Japanese comic book version. So it's been a very interesting education, becoming a visual novelist, an illustrated novelist. I think it's a different art form, and it's one that has largely disappeared. We have graphic novelists, we have movie makers, but very few people write books, novel-length books for teenagers or for adults, where they expect to have illustrations. And it's been, it's almost sad to think that some of those skills disappear, and it's really a different form. So I would love to see some of it return, and people sort of grow up expecting to see that some novels they read at least would have illustrations, and to not make it, you know, to not assume that because there's pictures in a book that it's for little kids.
Je me souviens, lisant enfant des livres illustrés, et ragé parce que l'illustration n'était pas insérée au bon endroit dans le texte. Soit l'illustration était placée trop tôt, soit trop tard. Comment est-ce que vous avez travaillé justement pour décider de la scène à illustrer, la phrase à illustrer? Est-ce que c'était votre choix, le sien?
Yeah. What we do was I write a few chapters and I send them to